The Beast Within, is it a werewolf story or a family drama about alcoholism? I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. The IMDb synopsis for The Beast Within reads, after a series of strange events leads her to question her family's isolated life on a fortified compound deep in the English wilds, 10-year-old Willow follows her parents on one of their secret late-night treks to the heart of the ancient forest. But upon witnessing her father undergo a terrible transformation, she too becomes ensnared by the dark ancestral secret they've tried so desperately to conceal. Okay, so what is this animal? Well, I had various thoughts throughout the movie. It presents itself in its trailer, and I think in the first 30 minutes of the movie, as a horror drama, with an emphasis on drama. But the more the movie progresses, I'm like, I think this is a drama with some horror elements. And by the end, I'm like, I think this is a drama. I think this is an artsy drama about alcoholism or something. You know, it so strongly leans into drama and leans into parallels to an alcoholic parent that the werewolfism felt strange. Basically, you've got a dad who is a werewolf, but his behavior patterns, they don't follow like classic werewolf patterns, except for, I guess, every red moon or something like that. His wife has to take him out to the forest and put an iron collar around his neck and leave him there overnight because he's going to transform into a werewolf, and then she comes and gets him, the next day or something. But like his behavior during the day when he's not at all close to transforming still parallels kind of like classic elements of an angry drunk who's an alcoholic. And so I'm like, okay, so in the werewolf lore, what's the explanation here? Is this guy being a jerk right now because of some concept in the werewolfism that hasn't been explained yet? Or because he's a jerk? Or is he both a werewolf and an alcoholic? And these questions were not answered until arguably, well, not arguably, I think they were kind of answered at the very end. Much of the story is from the young girl Willow's limited perspective, but not all of it. If all of it was strictly from her perspective, then I think I would have been okay with some of the missing details on what's going on with the parents and with the mother's father, the grandfather of the girl who's kind of in the picture, and the complexity in those relationships, the tension in those relationships. It makes sense that a kid would not understand those things, and if they would have locked us into her perspective and never given us any insight or scenes with just the adults that she wasn't privy to, then I think I would have found it easier to accept the missing details that I found frustrating. But as it was, they would have some scenes now and then with just the adults. And I'm like, I want to understand the complexity of the situation and give me something nuanced to chew on, some tension to appreciate. Because when you're dealing with adult relationships, and especially when there's some really deep sin issues or addiction, things like that in the mix, there's so much complexity. There's no one that's just wearing the white hat or just wearing the black hat. It's a mess of things going on and contributors to a bad situation. But I felt like they didn't want to give me some of those details and help me appreciate the complexity of it. They just wanted to keep everyone seemingly being inexplicably unreasonable. And I just wanted a few reasons why the adults were doing or saying certain things. Trust me with those details to wrestle with the complexity of it myself, instead of leaving those details out, assuming that I'll either make sense of the weirdness of people's words and choices, or I'll be okay with it. And I wasn't okay with it. It was frustrating. And at a certain point, I just started to detach from the drama, because I was like, these guys are never going to tell me. They're never going to let me in. They're never going to trust me with this information so that I have something really to wrestle with. I'm just like bewildered by people. The performances, though, I have to say, the strongest part of the movie for me. All the performers, including the young actress playing the girl Willow, I thought were really solid. They emoted believably. They elevated the material. They were the main reason that I kept watching. So I really appreciated the movie on that front. And I just wish that it would have had a story that worked for me better. As far as stunts and visuals, oh man, there is some CG. At first, I thought it was going to be. Well, the opening scene is like some practical effects that I'm like, ooh, I'm glad they're not showing me much of the monster because the little bits I'm seeing, I'm like, that's not really looking great. And then they switched over to CG for like a transformation scene, and it felt industry standard. That's not a compliment. That's not an insult. It just is what it is. But the visual effects are also very rare, both practical and CG. There's basically an opening sequence that's very brief and practical mostly. There's a CG transformation sequence, and then we don't really see any other effects of any kind until really almost the end of the movie. There were, and man, the climax at the end of the movie is when they really unload the practical effects. Now, I love practical effects. That is almost always going to be my preference. But I like them to be done with a higher degree of quality than was done here. And in some of the shots, man, sometimes the shots were longer on that werewolf in the last scene that I was like, oh man. But in other times they were using quick edits and cuts. I wonder, I wonder if the day that the teams presented the werewolf costume to the director, if he just, or she, who I don't know the case, said, oh crap, we gotta reduce the amount of lighting in these scenes. I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me if there was like a moment of like, oh crap, we got to make the best of this, because it's pretty rough. It's pretty rough, and this again coming from someone who greatly prefers almost every time practical effects. Okay, themes. I always like to ask when I'm engaging in entertainment, is there anything here that could trigger some worthwhile thought or conversation about moral, philosophical, spiritual issues? Well, yes. I mean, it leans so hard into comparisons to. I mean, I can only go off stereotypes. I have no experience with an alcoholic father or really close-up experience with alcoholism in my life at all. But it leans so hard into those stereotypes that we've seen in many movies before, and that I would suspect, people with experiences in this realm would be able to relate to. But it leans so hard into it that it barely feels like a werewolf movie. And at the very end of the movie, I'm like, I don't think this was a werewolf movie. But I think that leaning so hard into those ideas, I think to some it will feel heavy-handed, like it did to me. I'm like, well, let me draw the connections. Make me work a little bit more to draw the connections. It feels very in my face. And I wonder if some who have personal experience with alcoholism, if in some way they might be triggered by watching this, just because of how hard it leans into those things. The theme is almost unavoidable, but I'm not confident that's a good thing, ironically, as someone who really appreciates entertainment that deals with worthwhile real-world issues. I'm not sure that it serves the movie or the subject matter well to lean into it as much as they did here, especially when it doesn't provide any explanation of the complexities of addiction and the nuanced recognition that with those addictions, those who have them are not at fault in some ways, but are still at fault in others. They are neither the villain nor the victim completely. It's just a nuanced mess, and I didn't feel like that was represented here, and so I feel like thematically it doesn't serve the subject matter very well. I'm not sure that it serves it at all. Anyway, no idea what your tastes are in movies, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Peter, dang it! Skip this one. I mean, the trailer, it looks like it's just your kind of movie that's gonna... You get to have your cake and eat it too, right? You get the nerdy sci-fi or horror, fantasy, whatever. You get the nerdy stuff, but you also get character drama that you can really invest in and performances that are really strong. The trailer looked like it was going to give that to you. And the execution of the full movie it didn't. It leaned too much into the drama, and the effects, the practical ones, fell short. It's not even something that I would say watch if you have Hulu for something else for a month and you just want to make good on the subscription by watching something else. No, it's not even worth it on that level. It's just one to skip, unfortunately. Oh, but look forward to that Lee Wanell Wolfman movie that's coming in January. That'll maybe give you what you wanted here. Anyway, so this one's rated R for some violent content and language, and those are all of my thoughts for now on The Beast Within. I would love, as always, to get your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. Please like this video if you want to help other people find this content. Subscribe if you want to stay connected to it yourself. I want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for making this review possible. You can get info about the benefits of joining over at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. And then I hope you'll check out our podcast and stay connected to all CGC content over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.